When it comes to brands, like I'm all arounder. I'm excited about working with anyone that has kind of a serious challenge, and that could be a small startup. It could be and a player in the world of culture and entertainment.
What do you feel like you've done differently compared to the thousands of kids that show up to New York with a portfolio in hand and want to have a life in the creative world? And, within 5 years of that, most of them are no longer in New York and no longer in the creative industry.
It really comes down to showing up, because then who knows what will happen. But you have to kind of like do that push yourself. And I'd say I've been also fairly consistent in taking on challenges, whether it's moving between different companies or moving between different locations from Helsinki to New York and New York to California, now from California to London. I believe that you have to be a constant learner, like constantly be curious about things and embrace the fact that you don't know.
Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larsen. On this episode, we've got Teemu Suviala. He's the Global Chief Creative Officer at Landor Fitch. Done some really interesting things at Meta, Facebook, and Collins, and with some of the biggest brands in the world. Teemu, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, before we get started, tell us how to say your name if we were actually finished, though.
Oh, if we're actually finished, I would go fairly blunt and say Teemu Suviala. That's the bluntest and the kind of closest way you can get. But I go by many different versions of my name, so I can usually go through a crowd and see when someone gets even close there. So I might go as a Teemu. Some people just shout T, and I'm right there.
So over your career, you worked with like so many incredible brands. I mean, I can't list them all off, but can you give us some of like the most notable brands, the Targets and Pumas and just all these brands you've worked with over the years?
Yeah, you just got a couple of there that I've been lucky to work with. And of course, when I was with Meta, I got to work with many of the brands that are in there, whether they were the big app brands like Facebook and Instagram, but also the up and coming kind of new ventures within the world of AR and VR, including Oculus and portal video calling devices. But when it comes to brands, like I'm all arounder. I'm excited about working with anyone that has kind of a serious challenge, and that could be a small startup. It could be a player in the world of culture and entertainment, or it could be one of the big ones. And usually the challenges are fairly similar. There are problems with their positioning. There are problems with keeping up with the culture when everything has changed around them. Or there might be just problems with the growth, whether there's not enough of that or there's been too much of that and too fast. And the portfolio architecture is just blown up, and there's need help with that. But yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity to have worked with many different brands of many different sizes, and now with my current role, I think I have even more opportunity to do that with Landor and Fitch, which is such a large company in this space of brand transformation.
Yeah, how many staff?
Yeah, we are 1,300 people across 30 or so different offices. The creative crew is probably like 500 of that. It's kind of like shifting all the time a little bit, but that's a good sizable group of people solving really wicked problems for brands and products and companies.
I'm just even stalking you on LinkedIn, right? I see all these company names: Toyota, 3M, Fidelity, Google, Giovanni, Coca-Cola, Guggenheim Museum, all these ones. I'm interested in going back of how you got to here, because we both grew up snowboarders who wanted to be illustration majors, and and we have different lives now. Obviously, my snowboarding was in Western Canada, and yours was in Finland. But when you think about being a creative kid, my understanding is you came over to New York maybe like 2001-ish, kind of portfolio in hand, and decided to make a future for yourself. What do you feel like you've done differently compared to the thousands of kids that show up to New York with a portfolio in hand and want to have a life in the creative world? And, within 5 years of that, most of them are no longer in New York and no longer in the creative industry. What do you think you've done differently to rise to this height?
No, that's a good question. I think there are a couple of things there. Like one is there's a lot of luck in what we do and a lot of chance. And, it depends where you show up and how you show up, but you have to show up. You have to go out there. You have to be late at the parties. You have to, build your network. You're only as powerful as your relationships. So it really comes down to showing up, because then who knows what will happen. But you have to kind of like do that push yourself. And I'd say I've been also fairly consistent in taking on challenges, whether it's moving between different companies or moving between different locations from Helsinki to New York and New York to California, now from California to London. And it just keeps me on my toes. Like I believe that you have to be a constant learner, like constantly be curious about things and embrace the fact that you don't know. Because when you embrace the fact you don't know, you hopefully are then trying to learn something new, like learn that thing, like whether it was like playing an instrument or learning about a new brand. So there's a curiosity that has been pushing me to forward and new roles and to new sectors and new clients. And I think I'm partly kind of I got that from home and how I was raised, and my dad is the most curious person, just like walking Wikipedia of any source. And if he doesn't know, he goes and finds out and brings the information back to me or my kids. So I'd say curiosity and then showing up, probably a couple of important things in the mix.
So who are some of the biggest brands right now that Landor Fitch helps that we would know?
Yeah, you could just like name any, and we work with them. But there's from Coca-Cola to Google, and from big pharmaceutical companies to P&G, and cultural players to entertainment and sports, like Australian Open, for example. So it's a good mix of different brands and different sectors.
Yeah. So when you think about so many different sectors and the different needs that folks have, you think about this role being a global chief creative officer, and you've got 500 creatives, and like we grew up skateboarders and artists, and we don't like to be told what to do. So you get 500 people that at least some portion grew up like you and I and our friends, and you're supposed to lead them. Talk about the mix of like helping them while also giving them the creativity and like the flexibility and how that walking the line in between of like, hey, this is how we do things here, and we need you to go out and come out and invent something awesome that's going to impress the client, and how you balance those. Yeah.
Well, you can't force, creatives, or you can't ask them to do exactly a certain thing that is on your mind, and that's not good creative leadership. You have to build the platforms and processes for them to do amazing, and then you have to inspire them, and that's really the big part of my job, is to show what the world could be, like what the future looks like, and how we could get there, and how to brave up. So it's more encouragement rather than saying exactly this is what you do. And I don't know, like I want to be surprised by my teams because they know so much more about, new tools and I don't know, different cultures and different styles. Like I want them to lead me and surprise me. And then what I can do is then connect the dots, like put these different teams working together and learn from each other. And it's quite an organic thing that I'm building. So it's based on a lot of relationships and one-on-ones and discussions, and so that the information flows around. So yeah, if traditionally, if you think about creatives, like we don't want to be told what to do, partly true, and I'm kind of trying to build an environment where they are empowered and they can feel that they can really push and bring the best to the mix. That's the way to do it.
What's an example? What does that look like at a granular level? Like, let's say there's some CEO listening today and realizes that they want to help their creative team reach a higher level. What's something tactical? What's an exercise they can do? What's something they can implement?
Yeah, I'd say what I really enjoyed at Meta, surprisingly, was the culture on performance and goals. And it was really transparent. Like this is what we're trying to do, and this is the impact that you can have. And if you have the impact, and you're performing well, like these are the next thing that will happen. So there's a lot of transparency in building the culture. So I'd say surprisingly is like build a culture where it's clear what is expected. It's clear how are people rewarded and how they can get there on their own. So empower the teams, empower the people. But then also building a culture of creativity and curiosity. And as a leader, there's a lot of trust you need to be building for people to take risks and be curious. Like if there's not that safe environment, you're not getting the best out of people. So I think that can be tricky. Like how do you build a culture of trust, let's say, before people have done anything? So you have to do that from the get-go. I think those would be my initial pieces of guidance for someone who's building a creative team or struggling with their creative culture.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated with marketing because I got my first sales job when I was 15, and I feel like I've been selling ever since. Even when I'm CEO of my own investment fund, I feel like I'm just top sales guy, anyways. And I don't know, a dozen years ago or something, I was like, man, if I learned something about marketing, I wouldn't have to sell so much, right? So I've been like consuming the marketing books like crazy, take courses, and have tried to become a student of it more and more, and have ended up, I own another company that does consulting and leadership coaching and stuff like this, and have had a number of agency owners as clients, and then also had like very senior executives. Like one of my clients was a senior marketing executive at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. Everybody would know, with 100,000 plus employees kind of company. Okay. And there's a lot of money that gets sloshed around that is not so tied to performance. Right. And I'd be interested in your thought. Like, some people are so good at creating brand that for the same product, consumers are willing to pay premium, maybe because of the way it makes them feel about themselves or things like this. One of my business heroes, Warren Buffett, says that he loves owning, like when he owned Disney, he's like, what I love is a parent that would go, this is in the old days of VHS, right? Go to Walmart, they're picking out a movie for their kid, and this one's $16 and this one's $18. And the $18 one has a Disney logo on, and the parent pays the extra $2. He called it franchise value, right? Or like if somebody will walk across the street and pay a nickel more to get a Coke instead of whatever cola was at this gas station, like he loved that type of thing, right? And you look at somebody like a Gucci who can get somebody to pay $450 for a t-shirt, right? Like they have created something, they've created an intangible value that is exceedingly profitable, right? And yet so often marketing is like putting lipstick on a pig. It's like, we got to do some marketing, guys. And like, it doesn't deliver on the promise, where they haven't considered it holistically, and they're not even really, I don't know, it's like they're not playing to win. It's almost like a number of people are playing not to lose. Well, our competitors are doing marketing, so we should too. And somebody come up with something creative that'll help us win an award. But then there's maybe not tied as much to like, how is this going to make us money? And I know I'm firehosing you with a whole bunch of things, so feel free to react to any of that.
No, yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack. But I think to your point about like why pay premium? Like what does a brand have when people do that? And I think the couple of things there, like we as a brand, especially these days, you need to be consistent in delivering the quality that you've been doing. Like if that starts to drop, like you will be in trouble, and people are not willing to do that anymore. So there's that. Like there's a quality stamp that Disney has, that if it's, we know the production is going to be amazing. Also, if there's a Pixar stamp next to it, there's going to be maybe even next level. So they are helpful, but they need to deliver. Like Pixar, they need to win Oscars. They need to be really the best films of the year, and that's what they drive towards. But then there's the sense of like very true human quality of belonging to a group or a tribe or something, and that's what brands can do really well. They can bring people together, and it's not maybe for everyone. And it could be a brand that doesn't have an expensive product, but it can be a product that's hard to get, hard to find, and that's how a lot of brands are entering the market as well. For example, the Prime energy drink that was really hard to find in the very early days, but now it's kind of started to be everywhere, from Targets to all the supermarket chains in Europe as well. But they build this kind of like the need to belong. And I was looking at my kids, like, I don't know even where they found the Prime brand, probably on YouTube from the influencers that started the company. And they just created this thing that you need to belong to, and you were willing to pay, I don't know, $17 or $19 per bottle, when you now can get them for, I don't know, $2.99 or $2.50, whatever the number is. But that's how they kind of build the brand. It was like hard to find, and there was the premium, and then there's the tribe around it.
When you think about how many brands do not have genuine differentiation, like I don't know if you know this book, the Harvard marketing professor Youngmi Moon wrote this book called Different that I just love. And she's like, for connoisseurs, maybe you can tell the difference. But for all of us, the rest of us, like we walk down the cereal aisle, you're like, wow, it looks like a lot of the same. Or, you're choosing between United Airlines, Delta Airlines, American Airlines. And you're like, that one will give me $25 off. I'll switch. You know what I mean? Like you talk to any of the brand managers there and they're like, we're so different than United. But you talk to the consumers and it's like, kind of a sea of sameness, right? And yet there are those brands, Harley Davidson, GoPro, these brands that essentially have started their own cult. And it's like, and it's almost like giving the consumer a little bit of their identity of like, I don't just have some action sports camera, I have a GoPro. Like I'm a GoPro kind of person or something. When you think about the brands that do it right, where they don't blend into the sea of sameness, what do you think are some of the principles to accomplish that?
Great question. I'd say there are a couple of things. Like one is everything's constantly changing. So as a brand and as a human being, you need to keep your resilience, and you need to keep on tinkering and constantly shifting and learning new things. If you don't do that, there's going to be someone else. There's going to be a small brand, a startup that is just doing everything differently, and that's going to make that whole sector going to disrupt the whole sector. And if the brands are not constantly pushing on the differentiation, you can't be just different once. You have to be constantly different because everything is changing around you, the situation in the world and your competitive landscape. So that's one thing you have to do. Another important thing you need to be doing is thinking about your kind of core values that they need to be constant. So the core values have to be constant, and you have to kind of create those. But then how can the values talk to your current audiences and new audiences in new and different ways? You have to find some sort of like dynamic way to build your brand. So the core is there, but then you can adapt and be resilient. One thing that I've been also pushing lately is there are brands that try to be relevant in this time of polycrisis by two different ways. One is looking back at, nostalgia and to the good old days and kind of build their differentiation through that. Or they go like very hard on future and, many years from now and kind of speculate where the world could be going. However, I don't believe that that's a long-term plan to that will work in differentiation. Like you need to be living more today and tackle the problems of today. And
like what's an example?
Yeah, a good example is I'd say Mattel's Barbie movie. I use that example for a lot of things these days. But they first of all they were vulnerable. They know that they haven't probably done everything right. The Barbie brand probably hasn't done everything right. The world has been changing. We're in this world where we need to talk about what's the future of feminism? What are we teaching to girls? What are we teaching to boys? And all that. That's a problem of today. That's not a nostalgia piece. That's not a future, but that's something that we need to tackle today. And they did it extremely well with this movie that can be seen also as an act of marketing. So I would bring that as an example for that, but also a good example of a brand who dares to be vulnerable and kind of and open up, a bit transparent.
So I do a mini series on here on my show called Hollywood Explained, where I've got a woman who used to be at CAA and she's a CEO of a investment fund for a billionaire family, and a movie producer produced like The Dark Knight, Suicide Squad, American Hustle, like legit, right? And we talked about this a bunch, and like the guts to in their own trailer say this. If you hate Barbie, this is the movie for you. If you love Barbie, this is the movie for you. Like, who puts the word hate and their own brand on one image? Like that, there's some guts. There's somebody with some guts.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, and another good brand is Liquid Death, the water brand. Like, yeah. And they just completely disrupted and did things their way and keep on doing it. And they built a company of hundreds of worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know, like maybe the valuation is much more right now. And basically what they're doing is just water in a can. But it's the brand and the marketing that was so different from anyone else. When everyone else tries to be, we're a clean brand straight from the mountains, but they are just, they made the water look and feel and sound like beer.
I had Mike's boss on here from Humanaut. So he used to work at an agency called Humanaut that makes like really funny commercials. One's called Save the Bros. It was like a public service announcement for bros at the gym and how you need to get them on a higher quality protein drink that's actually natural. And it's just like, it's making fun of like jacked dudes in the gym, and it's making fun of public service announcements. But then it's actually just so awesome that you can laugh at yourself and you can laugh at it. And it just killed, right? So that guy's name is David Littlejohn, and he talked about Mike, and I've seen Mike talk about I think his last name's Sario. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's talked about how like he was so annoyed at the agency when he come up with like some crazy idea of like, oh no, this will rock things, and then like the brands would be too conservative. And he's like, so I was like, that's it. I'm just gonna go make my own decisions. And like, it's such a challenger brand. I mean, like his original ad is waterboarding. The woman is waterboarding somebody with the water. I mean, talk about talk about willing to alienate people to make other people laugh, right? And he's like, it wasn't just beige. I mean, like, he's like drawing a line in the sand, love us or hate us, but there's no lukewarm, right?
Yeah. And, the world's so different today when everything's global, and your niche market or your niche brand or product can be massive when you can deliver it globally and talk globally to anyone in real time. So that has changed the game.
We have a lot of founders and investment fund managers that listen to the show, CEOs. Your advice for them on, what I'm saying is like having the guts to not be beige. Like you said with Barbie, be vulnerable, like really go for it. What's your advice for leaders today who are like, oh yeah, maybe our marketing is a bit boring. Maybe it's not producing the return on investment it could if we were willing to, dive into our niche deeper or be vulnerable or something. How would you sum that up for leaders today?
I'd say, first of all, marketing is important. So I've seen many moments when, marketing budgets are not maybe considered, especially when you're like early stage company and getting, investment in, and of course you kind of want to really invest in the product and make sure that you have, the best engineers, you have everything that's needed for the product teams, but you have to start building the brand from get-go and start thinking about like who you are, like what do you stand for and how do you show up in the world. Because those are the things you can pivot. Like you need to ground so many things on them. Like ideally, even your product innovation is connected to, your core brand and what you stand for. And sometimes those things happen organically and naturally, and they just are there. If you're a founder-led company, you probably have the, similar values as the founder. And if the founder is active, like that will then find its way to marketing as well. But eventually you will need to use marketing because you're not going to be alone in that sector. Even if it's you're the first one doing it, there will be competition. So you need to secure that you can hold on to your leadership position or the position you want to have. And the only way you can do this is with a killer product and killer marketing. But they both need to happen. You can't have one without the other.
Okay, so you're getting to the heart of it. This is actually what I want to talk about. Someone who wants to quit doing marketing and wants to start doing killer marketing. What are some principles they need to embrace to get from like, oh, we have good marketing, it's really pretty good, to killer marketing, like the best of the best?
I'd say we mentioned the word different multiple times here already. It's like you have to be different. And not only different from your competition, you have to be different from anything that competes from the attention of your customers. Like you need to just go after that. And then I mentioned vulnerability. Like you have to be open and transparent and show what you stand for. As I said, the world's open. You can have niche product, you can have, a niche marketing, but still reach millions and millions of people and build amazing product and amazing brand on that. So I'd say those two things, like differentiation and vulnerability. And then on top of those, how do you keep transforming? Like how you keep your marketing live and how you react to what's happening in the world today, and not only paint the pictures of the future or rely solely on nostalgia.
What are some examples? What are some examples of people you think who've done killer marketing? We talked about Liquid Death, talked about Barbie. Who else?
Who else? I'm trying to think like different example here. Like maybe there's an example of someone who's been doing this consistently, because that's important as well. We could pull someone like Apple to the mix, and they've been consistently marketing since they launched the 1984 campaign. It was a jaw-dropping moment, and they've been delivering against that jaw-dropping moment since. So let's say not all the campaigns have been mind-blowing or changed the course of marketing, but they've been consistent in doing that and building this vision that they set in 1984. So I'd say like they are a good example of not maybe disrupting it anymore, but they are just delivering, same as they're delivering with the products.
It's funny as you say that. I've really noticed in all the stories and the biographies how involved the CEO was in the marketing. Like Steve Jobs was nuts about marketing. Like this wasn't some like side project that the marketing people work on like as an afterthought. Like he really embraced it as like he embraced it at such a core level, and like it makes me think about Phil Knight at Nike, and like in Shoe Dog or if you've he's done some great speeches at the graduate school of business at Stanford, right? Where he said things like, Nike's basically like a big marketing company that happens to sell shoes. This is the CEO of arguably the biggest shoe brand in the world, right? And he claims he's just a marketing company, right? And that's an interesting thing to take like that level of leadership to embrace it that hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I say even more than great marketers, I think they are great brand builders. And so they are more in the core. It's not about just a splashy campaign here and another there. There's that consistency. And even though Nike has it feels like they're constantly shifting and changing, but there are some things that are going through, which is the quality of the work and how they're taking a stand, and how things are edgy from the graphics to the subjects that they might be talking about. So I'd say both Phil Knight and Steve Jobs were great understanding brands and also understanding design, how important design was built in the brands, whether it was design of Jordans or design of iMacs or
the Apple Store,
or the Apple Store, and everything. And working with the best people in the business, like you be bringing the best architects, you bring the best shoe designers, you bring the best brand people to work on it, and embrace it. And it might be messy, and creativity is messy. Like that's the beauty of it. It's, again, this might be a note to anyone listening, but creativity is messy, and you have to let it be messy. Otherwise, you're not going to get into the best outcomes. And you just need to give that space for it, and trust the process. If you have great creative leaders, like they will eventually guide it to the right space. But that kind of like open, messy platform is needed for work that like Nike and Apple has been pushing out there.
I'm interested in any lessons you can share with us from almost 6 years inside the Meta, Facebook, all the craziness over there, and inventing the future, and what maybe one of your biggest takeaways is from your time there.
I'd say it wasn't easy to go to a big company and a big tech company after being years on the agency side and helping companies do this thing. So I had to learn quite a bit how to have impact within. And I think the biggest learning that I got was you need to like coffee, because you need to have a lot of one-on-ones, and you need to know all the right players, and you need to build the networks, because then you can start connecting the right things and start to have real impact. So I'd say, to me, within Meta specifically, was like you need to just invest in the relationships, even though half of your week is spent in one-on-ones. That's gonna be so valuable in the end, because you get to know where the opportunities are. Then second, you're building trust with these people by just opening up and listening and asking how you can help. I'd say that those have been kind of from a personal point of view, the biggest learnings. And second is just from, as almost like living within a Harvard case study. This is how a big company operates. This is how it pivots when something new has to happen. This is how new technologies, new processes are being applied to everything. That has been fascinating. If a company that size can move and pivot so fast, why can't a company of 100 people or 10 people or 1,000 people do the same? But again, I think it's based on the core values that have stayed the same, and they've been given the permission to do these pivots because of what the values are. For example, moving fast, or the world is only 1% done. Like they are just like giving you the freedom to shift and change and constantly be curious and learn and push new products out there.
So, global head of brand design, Reality Labs at Meta. What did that actually mean you did?
Yeah, I did something, I think. Well, Reality Labs is, it used to be called Building 8. So it was this kind of a secret spot at Facebook Inc. that was doing all the future bets from AR and VR to, neural interfaces and so on. And as it matured, more products were starting to come out, and the name changed to Reality Labs. So Oculus or Quest headsets were a good example of a product. And what I did there was,
by the way, that worked because we bought those for our kids for Christmas. So
I really, and I love where they're still going and the new products that are coming out. But my job was to build those brands and work with the product teams. And
let's talk about this. Let's dive into this. Oculus, right? My teenagers and all their friends been doing a lot of talking about Oculus for the last handful of years, right? So give us an example of, like, we could have gone this way, we could have gone this way. And when I'm the global head of brand, I pushed us to go this way, and here's why.
I was the global head of brand design. So I was making decisions on where the design was going.
Yeah.
So I couldn't kind of push the whole brand to
sure.
Where it needed to go.
But even design, it is such an font choice, color, all these things. Like, it is like that first visceral reaction before you've even read the word is like, oh, what does this feel like? With such a huge high visibility brand like that, what went into helping you make decisions about what direction to go or not with Oculus?
Great question. I think what I learned at Meta was the importance of data. And data as something that can inspire, not to lead. So even color choices, we started to look into, like, okay, what is the data? Where the world's going? What are the future insights? What's happening in fashion? What's happening in Korea? What's happening in the world of color technology in the next 5 to 10 years? So what I was pushing on is to have insight and data to almost all the design decisions, because that's how a company that is data-driven understands how to make the decisions. Okay, we have data on that. Let's say orange is going to be a really important color within this consumer segment, and that's how we made certain color decisions. But it also applies to, like, usability and what works in marketing and what works in UI and UX. So there's a lot of these kind of data points that started to inform design. But on top of that, you still need to bring in the intuition. Like, that's kind of how people like me have been important in companies that are so data-driven. So we can bring a different point of view and a kind of more of a human point of view. Like, yeah, that's the data, but how should it feel? And what are the emotions we wanna create in the world and in the people who are getting this message from us? And it was kind of a combination of those. But yeah, understanding data and then bringing that into decision making was important. And that was kind of new to me coming into a company like that.
So can you tell us a story of an actual decision that you made?
I think they'll give you two examples. One is example of you're really given full freedom to build the team that you like. You need to make a business case, like these are the folks that I need in order to deliver amazing work. So as a leader and a creative leader, that's probably the most important decision that you are allowed to do, is hire the people you need, because that will then help push the work to a place where you want it to go. So that's a kind of big decision as a creative leader you get to do and need to do. But then when it comes to the kind of design and brand work itself, there are not so many people within a company who understand, let's say color psychology, or what typefaces are trendy and whatnot, and what kind of work in different environments. So it's this kind of like a granular, smallish sounding things, which then summed up together actually create the whole suite of sacred brand assets that the brand can deploy multiple different times and build the recognition for the brand. So even though they might feel that they're incremental, let's say, what would be a good example? So there was a small team that was working on the meta rebrand, and with some partners, and together we made the decision with the leadership. It was always a collaboration. Some of these big moments, like what the new symbol was going to be, and open, collaborative, transparent culture. Everyone chimes in, and you're one of the many making those calls. And sometimes it can be hard when there's a lot of stakeholders that needs to get alignment on a thing, and then it's a mutual decision. And that's also one thing that you learn in a company like that. You need to get multiple different stakeholders on board. There's not like someone who makes the decision just on their own, except maybe for Mark, like he can make a call, and he many times did, but that was always informed with a lot of data and a lot of the research that the teams had done.
Yeah. Any observations of him from the inside? Things that you were impressed with, or anything from being on the inside?
Visionary, leader, who's openly there with the staff, as one of many. I was impressed, like during the first weeks, even there, like how, the weekly Q&As with him and some other leaders who popped in was just there in person, and you could just show up and ask anything, whether it was around new products, product roadmaps, or where does Mark get his t-shirts. Like it was, everything was open, and that kind of culture of transparency was pretty amazing to see in a company of that size, and also from a company that a lot of people might think it's very secretive. There's a lot of openness and transparency.
Yeah, it's funny because there's certainly a number of people on social media, or people who aren't big Mark Zuckerberg fans. But my brother and I were just talking about him over the weekend. He was on some podcast. I think he was a Lex Friedman podcast, talking about entering a jiu-jitsu tournament, and he entered with his first name and middle name instead of his last name, and nobody figured out it was him until it was time for his fight. And he was saying how much he likes it. My brother and I did competitive judo growing up, and afterwards he went on to go get I think he's got his brown belt right now. And Zuckerberg was just talking about this idea of like, that he likes this idea of like, you try and you lose, and then you try better and you still lose, and then you try better and you still lose, and then you win. Yeah. It was like, man, that sounds like entrepreneurship. And anyways, it's just like a different view, other than like the Mark in Congress, testifying at Congress or something, of this, like, it felt like, oh, that's probably like a little more the real him, is what it felt like.
And it's hard, but if you're someone who starts a company very young, and you were supposed to be, amazing engineer only, and then suddenly you have, a lot of people you're responsible for, but also a lot of data you're responsible for, and then, a lot of things that you're responsible for in the world at large, that can be really hard. Like I have a lot of empathy for founders who built something really massive and, moved away from the role that they were trained for or they wanted to do initially. But yeah, I respect that resilience that they have, and they can be good examples for everyone, including creatives. Like we need to be constantly shifting now with like new technologies. Who knows how AI will change our industry? Probably quite a lot, which I don't know in which ways, but we need to just embrace it. We need to say hello to this new friend, as we should do to all things that are new. There are not too many people who are friends with the new, so the world can be unkind, and I feel like us, creatives and designers, we're often at the forefront of things that are new, and we need to be there and embrace and take these new things on board and see where they take us.
Well, okay, this is actually a great transition, because thinking about like things that are new and how things are changing, and specifically, CEO of this huge multi-billionaire individual of a multi-billion dollar company is on a podcast on YouTube. Like we didn't do that 20 years ago. There was no YouTube, right? So I just spent last week at Vid Summit. It's a conference that Mr. Beast owns with Daryl Leaves and Shonduras and these guys. And so it's a bunch of the biggest YouTubers in the world went to Texas last week, and we got to listen to all these talks, right? And, you see these brands like a Mr. Beast who, figures out how to build an audience. And then, I think his chocolate company did 200 million at second year, right? And like fully on track to be $1 billion plus company just in chocolate, let alone his other businesses, right?
Yep.
And this concept of like CEOs becoming much more accessible. I mean, I had Samara Cohen on here. She manages $6 trillion at BlackRock, and now she's doing some Q&A shows. She had the CFO from McLaren. Are you in London? Is that where you're at?
In London.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So, such an iconic brand, McLaren, with the F1 team and the cars, and she had their CFO on her show, and she's interviewing. And like, these are not like this type of like, founder-led shows or senior executive-led shows. Like that's not historically how it was done in the last 50 years. So I'm interested at these mega brands. I mean, you see it so much more in smaller brands or up-and-coming brands. Kind of it's like founder content or senior executive content. I'm interested what any of those conversations are like at the giant brands.
One angle to this could be looking at from a talent perspective. Pretty much everyone is looking at the same talent, and the talent is looking like where they want to work, where the culture is, open and non-hierarchical, and the big companies they need to start looking into that as well, and they're really looking at okay, how do we open up, and how can we be more transparent, how can we be more human, and also have the C-suite to be more approachable. Like they can be on podcasts, they can be out there on the streets, they can be doing stunts with the influencers. So we're seeing that, and I think it's an exciting time. We are showing that we are all just human beings. The struggle is real. We're all struggling with the same things. It just might be like of different scales and of different details, but we are all in these kind of big crises together. And I really admire that there's more empathy shown by stepping down or sideways and showing up. It's going to help with talent acquisition. It's going to help with like making your brand feel more approachable, your products more approachable, and including your brand.
Back in the day we had the Richard Bransons who were out there getting what he calls free ink, get on the front news page of the newspaper, right? But like you look at like the Steve Jobs like being there for the presentation, Elon Musk for Tesla, and now you see like CEO of Nvidia or these people. It does seem like there's more of a trend of like get the C-suite up front, get the CEO actually being more of the face of the brand, or maybe it just seems like that to me.
No, I think there's truth in there, but what I'm seeing also is giving other people the opportunities to be the spokespeople of the brand and the product, whether they are people who work within the company or are fans of the products. So it could be, giving some power back to the customer and have them to be the spokespeople and invited on stages with the C-suite. But yeah, I think it's exciting, and we're going to be seeing more of that. And we're going to be seeing more influencers. We're going to be seeing more YouTubers becoming even more impactful. And that's going to be interesting to when we compare it to kind of the celebrities of today and of the past.
Yeah, why do you say that? I actually completely agree with you, but I want to know
Yeah.
why you think that YouTubers are going to be taking a bigger role in business in general.
I think that they just have more influence. When I'm looking at, if someone like Brad Pitt asks, or if Brad Pitt would ask his followers to do a thing, maybe there's a group of, I don't know, 10,000 people who might do something. But then there's Mr. Beast. He asks people to, or inspires people to do something. There's going to be thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who will get there. So I think it's just like the impact and influence of this new generation is much more much more powerful. Therefore, brands and companies will look into them as well as partners and maybe part of the C-suite. Who knows? Who knows? Well, one will see a YouTuber sitting in the C-suite of a Fortune 500 company.
A couple of maybe optimism things I can share from the event was Mr. Beast. I was sitting in like the second row, so I'm like 20 feet from him, right? And he's saying like all the black box that YouTube can feel like of the algorithm and the tagging this and the analytics that. He's like, every time anybody says algorithm, just use the word audience. It's not what does the algorithm want, it's what does the audience want. Okay?
Love that. Yeah.
And then he says, you do not need to like be such a data nerd and so worried about the retention and curve and the tagging and all this stuff. He's like, make better videos. Like it literally comes down to make better videos and think audience first. And he's like, I can cut through all the crap. This is the biggest YouTuber in the world, most followed human being on the world. I think like as of last week, he had like 185 million followers or something, right? And he's like, the audience first, make better videos. Everything else is a rounding error.
I was with Amazon last week, and there was something similar that someone shared, and it was around, data can be flawed. Like there are a lot of things in the data that might be wrong, and there was this thing that they talked about, like how the anecdotes from the customer, if they are showing something different than the data, then the anecdotes are probably right and the data is wrong. And I think that was fascinating from a company of that size. And again, a company that is, known for building things around data and algorithms.
But I think it goes back to your comment about intuition. And I know we're out of time. We're running down time here, but it goes back to your point about intuition of like all the color theory, all the science, all the data, but then also like, having somebody with taste, come in with the intuition as well. And it's kind of like that quote of like, not everything that can be measured matters, and not everything that matters can be measured.
Love that.
Listen, this has been so fun. What do you want to leave people with today?
I want leave people with some creativity or tips on creativity. It is what fundamentally, makes us human beings. Sometimes I'm annoyed when people call me like, hey, you're the creative. We are all creative. So I just want to make sure that whether you're a CEO or investor or someone who's starting in I don't know, data science, we're all creative. We're all human beings. So trust on your intuition, similarly as you're trusting the data. And if you feel that you're not sure like where to go, collaborate, open up, be transparent, bring some people on that can kind of jam with your intuition, and you'll get somewhere great.
I love it. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.